have 12 o'clock, and since we have quorum, let's go ahead and get started. Since we have several agenda items today, I'm going to welcome everyone to our Public Assembly Facilities Commission meeting. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. I'm going to go ahead and call it to order. All members of the Public Assembly Facilities Commission are participating virtually. For the virtual meetings, commission members will be muted until asked to be heard. At that time, they will be recognized and will be unmuted. When there is a vote, it will be necessary to take a roll call vote. A commission member will be recognized and will raise their hand and state their vote. Today's meeting is a public meeting. Citizens can listen to the meeting if they've contacted the city manager's office to make the necessary arrangements. The meeting also will be live streamed on the city's YouTube channel. A recording of today's meeting will be available by Friday, November 19th, 2021 on the city's website. Rachel will go into a roll call, please.
Haley Jinkles.
Present.
Otis Northington. I see that he's here.
I see, yeah.
Billy Rich.
Here.
Manya Stewart.
Here.
Kathleen Garber. Not here. Vicki Miller.
Present.
Ray Bowden. Not here. Bill Oakes.
Present.
And Priscilla Green.
Present.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Rachel. I want to give a good shout out to our new commission members today. Welcome, Bill Oakes, and my dear friend Priscilla Green. Welcome to the Public Assembly Facilities Commission. We're glad to have you all here.
Welcome, Priscilla. Thank you guys so much. I look forward to it.
All right. Well, we have lots of things to vote on today, so we're going to breeze through these as quickly as we can because we do have ethics training at the bottom of our agenda today, and we want to leave enough time for that as well. So you all should have received the August 2021 minutes. Could I have... Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but they wanted to go ahead and do the ethics trainings first before we roll into all of our other items, just so we can get it out of the way.
Okay, sure. Are we ready?
John, are you ready?
I am. So thank you. So Rachel, I'd sent there's a ethics training as well as a open meetings and public records. I figured we'd probably do them both, but we can do ethics first if you want to. There we go. And it's my hope that these won't take too long. It's they're required for the new members, for Ms. Rhodes, Ms. Green, but it's probably a good refresher for everybody just to just to have kind of in the back of your mind what the city's ethics policy says and doesn't say. What the open meetings records are. Public records, open meetings information as well. So, excuse me, if there are no comments just to start with, we'll go ahead and get started on this. Okay. So the city has an ethics policy. It applies to all city employees as well as all elected officials and appointed officials. So it would cover all members of the city council as well as all members of any of the councils, boards, and commissions, which would include this commission today. Next slide, please. You can go to the next slide as well. So the city has had this ethics policy in some way, shape, or form for a very long time. But it was sort of formalized and codified back in about 11 or 12 years ago, and made applicable to everybody. The main things are to, as you can see there, the ethics policy is intended to foster high standards of integrity, make sure all the commission members are honest and truthful and transparent, and importantly, to sort of prevent the risk of any kind of undue influence or conflict of interest that may may be there for one of the commission members. And in doing so, it helps promote and strengthen the public's confidence in the city government. Obviously, you guys are representatives of the city, so you're expected to observe and follow, be on your best behavior, basically, whenever you're in public doing any kind of work that's related to this commission. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about gifts, favors, and gratuities, because this kind of includes sort of the main way when we run into the possible issues with violations of the city's ethics policy. Gifts, they can be monetary, they can be tangible. It can be food, beverages, it can be entertainment, it can be tickets, it could be a watch. It can take the shape of a lot of different things. But with few exceptions, you can't give or receive or agree to give or receive anything of any kind of real value that's connected with your official business. So you can, one of the examples we'll talk about is meals. If the commission members are attending a banquet or a function at which lunch is provided, and this is on the next slide, thank you. Obviously, where food is sort of expected to be served, you guys could eat there and not have to worry about violations of the ethics policy. But if a member of the public wanted to take you to lunch to talk about business that could come before the commission, you can go to that lunch, but you can't accept their offer to pay for it. It says down there that there's a $25 per meal or $25 amount that is presumed to be nominal. But it's like if somebody who doesn't have business before the commission wanted to take you to lunch, at a diner or something like that, and the lunch cost was less than $25, that would be okay. But the key is that the person that that's paying for your meal has no current or anticipated future business relationship to you. You don't want to put yourself in the position of seeming like you're taking what could look like a bribe from somebody that could be in exchange for a vote in the future. So if you're ever worried about whether your business lunch or dinner or whatever may be a violation of the ethics policy, obviously the easiest way to prevent a violation is just not to accept their offer to pay and pay for your own meal. There are some exceptions. Another one, if a restaurant in town gives a discount to all city employees, obviously you can take advantage of that. Same with any other kind of discount, not necessarily food, but any kind of discount that's available to city employees. That would be something you could do as well. Or a couple. Next slide, please. You can go one more as well. The next two slides deal with plaques and honorariums, that are given. Those are presumed to be okay when they're done in recognition of your service, or if you speak at a function at a trade show or something like that, and they want to give you an honorarium for participating, that would be okay as well. But it really comes down to sort of what the dollar amount is, and the city's ethics policy has presumed that anything that's over $25 is going to be improper. But any kind of gift, like on the next slide, it shows an example between a stress ball and a leather portfolio. Obviously the stress ball is not going to be more than $25. So if somebody wanted to give you that would be okay. But if they're giving you something that's really nice and it's clear that it's over 25, or you don't know whether it's over 25, obviously, just say thank you, but no thank you, and decline the gift. The next point is important to note, and it says on there that there's no exception to the following. Basically, and I'll read it for you guys just to make it clear. If the circumstances of the gift of any value, regardless of whether it's over or under $25, would lead a reasonable person to conclude that the gift was given with the intent to influence an official action or decision to affect the performance of you as a representative or commission member, or in anticipation of any kind of reward, then the gift cannot be accepted. So, even if it's less than $25, if it seems like it could be seen as, in effect, as a bribe, or a promise for some help in the future on a project or request or proposal that may come before the commission, then you'll need to decline that. And we'll talk to it too, but I mean, there are penalties for violating the ethics provisions and the ethics policy as well, but we'll hit on that in a minute. Another thing to note too is, as shown on the next slide, there's no, you can't use any city-owned vehicles or anything like that for personal, private use, convenience, or profit. So you can't, come in to, use the city printer to print off a bunch of personal flyers or something like that, or, borrow a city bulldozer for yard work or whatever. So, I mean, some of this stuff is going to be pretty obvious and pretty self-explanatory. When in doubt, just don't do it. There's the next slide has another caution too on basically insider trading. Like if the city is going to do something in the future, you can't try to act on that ahead of time to try to benefit yourself or profit off of it. I'm not sure what kind of matters would come before you guys. That would be something that a situation like this would arise. But, when in doubt, you can always reach out to me, and my contact information is on the last slide. The next slide just deals real quick on disclosing confidential information. Some of this I'm going to touch on in a second in the public records presentation, but if information is confidential, privileged, or proprietary, that you have in your possession as a result of a matter that has come before the commission, and you can't disclose that, that would be against state law. Sometimes information can be presented to you in confidence, to help with the commission's, contract decision making or something like that. And you obviously can't just flip that or sell it to a competitor or something like that. Clearly, obviously, I mean, that shouldn't come as a surprise to you guys. And then the next slide, I've already harped on it, but it's on there again. Don't accept a bribe, even if clearly don't accept an obvious bribe. I mean, I know you guys aren't that dumb, but don't accept anything that could look like a bribe, because that would be problematic as well. One of the issues that could come up, when you deal with folks who are on a commission where it is not their full-time job, as you guys are, there's the chance that you could, that your company or somebody that you have a business relationship with could end up with a matter that's before the commission for consideration. Be it a business that you have an ownership interest in or something like that. In the event that comes up, you'll need to reach out to our office, reach out to me to get some guidance on that, just to make sure that everything is done properly. That if a recusal is needed, or some sort of keeping you sequestered from the conversations about it, and that's on the next slide. That will be that'll be handled. We'll obviously help you out with that as need be, to make sure that everything's done properly. If you or anybody on the commission has a question about whether a situation you've been in might be a violation of the ethics policy, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Human Resources. All that, any kind of complaint or inquiry or question or whatever will be held, confidential. There won't be any retaliation or anything like that. And my contact information for questions about the ethics policy, ethics issues, is on the last slide here. I kind of breezed through that kind of quick. Do any of y'all have any questions about it? Does not appear so. I can't see everybody's face on here, but I'm gonna assume that there are no questions. So Rachel, if you want to switch over to the meetings and public records law presentation. Okay, thank you. So you guys, as I mentioned during the Ethics Commission presentation, you guys are members of a public body. Therefore, all the regulations and the state laws and whatnot that apply to public officials, elected officials, would also apply to you all. There are, and we'll kind of touch on this, there's official meetings and unofficial meetings, that trigger different sorts of requirements. But the commission is a public body, defined on the next slide as, it's elected or appointed body of state or local government that has 2 or more members. It has some sort of legislative, policymaking, or administrative or advisory functions. And clearly you guys are aware of this, but you guys are, all of you who are members of this commission are members of a public body. I kind of touched on official meetings and unofficial meetings. The next slide says that, only official meetings are subject to the open meetings law. The open meetings law, we'll define official meeting for you first, which is on the next slide, Rachel, please. Thank you. An official meeting is a meeting of a majority of the members of the public body, which a majority of the members would constitute a quorum. And that's important because when there's a quorum, then official action can be taken. Like if you guys are having a commission meeting and there wasn't a quorum, you could still meet, but you couldn't conduct business. But when there is a quorum and you guys are together at an official meeting, one that is, like the 3rd Monday of every month, when you're conducting hearings, you're discussing, whether to enter a contract or you're doing long-term planning, whether you're voting, all of that would be done at an official meeting. An unofficial meeting would be something that happens, not on the 3rd Monday of the month. So if you guys all wanted to get together for dinner at Christmas, that would be okay. There would be, no issues with having to send out a notice of a public meeting or something like that. But if you guys are together for a Christmas dinner and you're 3 or 4 bottles of wine in, and you want to start talking about the commission's plans for 2022, that's a public meeting. You got to be careful that you don't get into having those kinds of conversations outside of the official meeting structure. Which is that italicized sentence at the end, a dinner meeting by a majority of the commission to discuss the organizational structure or potential changes or planning, that would constitute an official meeting. So, obviously there's official meetings that are calendared, the 3rd Monday, but any kind of meeting where there's a quorum and you guys are discussing official commission business would be considered an official meeting, which means that official meetings can take place via email. If there is an email that's going back and forth that has everybody copied on it and you guys are discussing stuff, and that can include emails, it can include text messages, it can include, the chat in Zoom. All of those are official meetings, which means that, if you're having an official meeting, you have to provide notice to the public, an opportunity to attend, all that other stuff. So it's not, it's not a good idea to conduct business by email. You know, my advice is always, if you have a question, you need to talk about it, pick up the phone and call somebody. And if you need to talk to everybody about it, then it needs to be, that conversation needs to happen at a regular official meeting and not, you know, these one-off email threads or text message chains. We can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. So, you know, as I mentioned, you know, open meetings law requires public notice of the official meeting. When you guys are, you know, in a text message chain or an email discussion or a Zoom chat, you're violating the open meetings laws by doing so. And this is something that I know, you know, some of the folks on here know, but if staff needs to have a conversation with you, you all being the commission, or if the commission members want to talk to one another via email, like to send documents or something, the best way to do that is to address your email to the chair of the commission and then blind copy everybody. That way there's not the possibility of somebody hitting reply all and having a discussion, which then would trigger or would be a violation of the official open meetings law. And, you know, we'll kind of talk about public records in a second, but any kind of correspondence that you're generating that is related to your job as a commission member is a public record, which can include stuff that's on your phone. It can include your text messages on a personal phone. It can include a call log to your home phone. It can include emails on a personal email account. So if a public records request comes in and they want to know, say, everything that, you know, all the emails that, say, Bill Oates has sent to everybody regarding this issue, and there's emails that are in his city official email as well as his personal email. His personal email is going to get opened up. And, you know, staff has ways, our IT staff has ways to pull emails out of personal email accounts, but it's not something that anybody wants to go through. So please make sure that you're keeping your emails within the city, within your official city email address, just to avoid, you know, any kind of issues with opening your personal accounts up to possibly being subject to a record search. We have talked about official meetings. As you can see on the next slide, whenever there's an official meeting that's being held, there are notices that have to go out by state law to notify members of the public about the meetings. And there are 4 different types of official meetings that this commission can have. They're regular meetings, there's special meetings, there's emergency meetings, and then there's recess meetings. And I'm going to talk about all 4 here in a second. A regular meeting it's held at a fixed time and place on a schedule that has been adopted by the public body. So for you guys, the 3rd Monday of each month, you know, your schedule is posted in advance, so the public knows in advance whenever there's going to be official meetings of this commission. If the schedule has to change for some reason, then the clerk's office has to be notified before that meeting changes. And if it's a special meeting that's being changed, you know, an official meeting requires 7 days heads up if the date's going to be changed. A special meeting only needs a 48-hour heads up when a special meeting is going to be either calendared or you know, notified to the public. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Thank you. A special meeting is a meeting other than an emergency or recess meeting that convenes at a time and place other than what is shown on the regular meeting schedule. So if you guys wanted to have a breakout session to discuss maybe something in more detail, something that you didn't want to bog the normal agenda down, then you could have a special meeting which you can schedule on basically 2 days notice. But a special meeting is generally limited to just the items that are on the agenda for that special meeting. Next slide, please. There's emergency meetings as well, which are called on short notice due to unexpected circumstances. There's much smaller notice requirements for that. Basically, only the news media would get notice of that. But I don't know that you guys would ever need to call an emergency meeting, but generally, if it can wait 48 hours, then it's easier just to convene a special meeting. If something absolutely had to be discussed tomorrow, then you could call an emergency meeting if need be. And then there's recess meetings, which is the last one, which is basically where you hold the meeting open. So you'll go through your meeting, you'll recess it instead of adjourn, and then you'll come back at a later date and then pick back up where you left off. And so, I don't know, that would be, I guess, if you guys were running long on your agenda. Say, for example, when you have an attorney here who's talking about ethics and public meetings and stuff, and it's causing a time crunch, you could recess your meeting to a later date if need be, if you needed to get everything done. Generally, all official meetings are open to the public. That's why, these Zoom links are posted on the website. It's why, the public has a notification requirement. But you guys can go into closed session, as noted on the next slide, to talk about, legal matters that would have to do with like a lawsuit or something you had a question about from an attorney. Confidential information, be it employee confidential or investigation or a possible development deal or something like that. I don't know that you guys would need to go into closed session that often. It's probably pretty rare, but in the event that you would need to, obviously you guys would reach out to me to coordinate that, because there is a procedure for going into closed session, which basically requires a motion to go into closed session. It states the reason why you're going into closed session. Next slide, please, Rachel. Thank you. Why? So a motion that you're going into closed session that states why you're there. And then, to come out of closed session, you have to make a motion to adjourn the closed session, then come back into the open session and make a meeting to close or to adjourn the meeting. Generally, closed sessions are very specific. They are, it may be related to one specific item. So you can't go into a closed session to talk about, say, a lawsuit, and they're like, well, hey, since we're all here, let's talk about this contract for the fair. It doesn't work that way. But again, if you guys ever need to go into closed session, you would just let me know and I would help you guys coordinate that, because there's, next slide, please, because there's limits on who can attend a closed session. Members of the general public are not allowed to be there. So there's ways, especially when you're conducting your meetings over Zoom, there's ways to make sure that if you have a closed session that everybody that the members of the public are not somehow out there watching this. And then next slide. So one more slide, please. Sometimes, depending on what you're doing in closed session, you may or may not. It may be an informational item. It may be something that requires a vote. So, I mean, I don't want to harp on all this because, one, I've been talking for like 30 minutes. But if there is a need for you guys to be in closed session, then I'll be there to help you guys through it. So let's go to number 20, please. One more, please. Thank you, Rachel. You guys know that there's, since you're a public body, you have to keep full and accurate minutes of your meetings, minutes and general accounts of everything. It's got to be memorialized, it's got to note that there's a quorum. I mean, this is stuff that you guys are doing every month anyway. Basically, after every meeting, somebody, either as a commission member or a city staff member, is compiling the minutes. You guys vote on the minutes at the next meeting, or review them at the next meeting. So, I mean, this is probably not new to a lot of you. It may be if you've never been a member of a public body or, voted on a HOA board or something like that, where you have to talk about, minutes and forms and all that. It may be kind of new to you, but I'm available to talk through these things, as are, some other folks who have been on the commission for a while, who work for city staff. There are a few consequences of failing to comply with the open meetings law. I mean, the main one is that if business is conducted in violation of the law, then that business could be invalidated. I'm not really aware of this happening a whole lot, because it just, most of the time people know if they're not at an official meeting that they're not actually taking, any kind of official actions. If the violation is super egregious, then individual members of the commission could be liable for any fees as a resulting from that. But again, if this situation were to ever arise, and obviously our office would already be notified of it, we'd work through it with you. I'm going to jump in next into public records laws, but before I do that, does anybody have any questions about the open meetings and official meeting stuff? Seeing a couple of, okay, so we're good. So state law says that pretty much any material that is generated or created by a city or by any of its councils or boards is presumed to be a public record. And public record takes the shape of basically anything. It can be paper, emails, pictures, film, recordings, anything that is generated or created pursuant to or in connection with the commission's business. All public records are presumed to be open to inspection by any member of the general public. Generally, when our office receives a public records request, we will go through and work with city staff to identify what is actually pertinent and what needs to be turned over. There's very little that you guys are going to come in contact with or generate that would not be subject to disclosure under the public records law. I mean, there are a few exceptions, that are touched on the next two slides. I'm not going to read them all, but most of it has to deal with information that is confidential or trade secret. For the purposes of what you guys are going to be doing, I don't know that you're going to run into a whole lot of this stuff, but if documentation includes like social security numbers or economic development records or anything like that, then that information would be prohibited from being disclosed. And maybe it would be redacted, but generally it's not going to be disclosable. And clearly any kind of communications that our office is involved in, that where there's emails or documents generated that are related to a lawsuit or some other legal issue or legal dispute, that would not be a public record, but that would also be something that we would be aware of anyway. That was really quick on public records. The main thing to know is that pretty much everything that you do, that you generate, that your emails and documents or notes, all that stuff is probably going to be considered a public record. And so when things are a public record, then you have to be careful that you're not destroying them, because you generally have to keep public records for a certain number of years. It depends on, sometimes it's as short as 1 year, sometimes it's forever. So generally don't destroy anything unless you have gotten the okay from somebody in our office to do so. And on the last slide, it has my phone and email. If you guys have any questions about open meetings or public records or ethics, feel free to reach out to me on that. And I'll take questions on any of the things that I've talked about, if there are any, and if not, cool.
Commission members, are there any questions at this time? If none, then we will move on with our agenda items. Thank you so much, John, for that.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me. Hope you guys have a good day.
So we're going to go on to the approval of our minutes. So you all should have received minutes for the August 16th, September 3rd, and October 18th commission meetings. If you have reviewed those, could I get a motion to approve the last 3 months of meeting minutes?
I move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you for that. The motion has been made and it has been properly seconded. Is there any question? Hearing none, we will take a vote via roll call.
Vicki Miller,
Yes.
Billy Rich,
Yes.
Monia Stewart,
Yes.
Otis Northington,
Yes.
Haley Jingles,
Yes.
Bill Oakes,
Yes.
Priscilla Green,
Yes.
and Kathleen Garber.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Rachel, I think Ray Bowden has joined as well.
Okay, Ray,
Yeah, I've been on, so yes.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for that. We will move on to our financial statements. Given the lateness of the time, I will ask if we could give a high-level overview of the statements since all of these were emailed to the commission members. So if we can do the bottom lines and anything we need to point out for the financial statements, that will help us move along and try to keep us within our time limit here. So I'll turn it over to the finance folks.
Thank you. My name is Dewey Williard, and I'm joining you today to review the statements for the last fiscal year, and then also for the first quarter of fiscal year 21. If you have any questions, you will just have to interrupt because we will move through as quickly as we can. The first statement is the Carolina Classic Fair, and it's the year-end statement. So it should be the June. And I don't know, is somebody Rachel, are you gonna be presenting those? We'll just let you know that the revenues and expenses for fiscal 21 is for fiscal year 20 is for the 2019 fair. And the revenues and expenses, or the revenues for fiscal year 21 is for the drive-through fair that was held in 2020. The bottom line, as you can see, we had income for fiscal year 20 of $796,000, as opposed to a loss in fiscal year 21 of $697,000. That's a decrease of $1.5 million. The next page is the Winston-Salem Fairgrounds, and this statement includes both the fair and non-fair events. There was no fair and there was no Thunderbirds hockey in fiscal year 21. So if you will look down at the very bottom, you will see we had a loss of $499,000 in fiscal year 20 and a $1.4 million loss in fiscal year 21. I will point out that the line right above that, well, the information you should know before that is the original estimate for the loss last spring was 1.8 million. So the 1.3 million or the 1.4 million that we actually realized was offset by contributions for the general fund that you could see as a line above the bottom line. that 421,000. Bowman Gray. For fiscal year 21, we are missing both Winston-Salem State University football and the 2020 second half of racing. So the revenues that's showing there is for the spring of calendar year 2021 racing. I think I said that correctly. And if you will go down to the bottom line, you can see that in fiscal year 20, we had a profit of 48,000 as opposed to a loss of 162,000 in fiscal year 21. I believe that Grant is going to talk about the Benton Convention Center before I present the statement.
Okay, good afternoon. So if you look at the year, we had budgeted $2,379,000. We came in at $305,000. Obviously, everybody knows that with the meetings mandate, we weren't allowed to have meetings for quite a bit of the year last year. But all the way to the bottom, we did miss budget by $30,115. But being a shortfall of $2 million in revenue, I feel pretty strong that, you know, we watched our expenses throughout the year. I'll be glad to answer any questions on that year as we're trying to consolidate time. Dewey, back to you.
All right. Go back to that same statement, please. All right. Other things to note, if you look at the bottom line, there was income of 74,000 for 2020 fiscal year, and we had 190,000 or 191,000 for fiscal year 21. But you need to look at the line above that to show that shows the support from both the hotel motel tax fund and the general fund support. We actually transferred in 712,000 as opposed, no, our transfers in was 712,000 more than the previous year. So you just need to see that that definitely impacts. Usually this is can be a zero at the bottom. We transfer just what it is to make it to zero. This actually is going to be, those income is going to provide cushions for future year losses. I also want to let you know that when you're comparing expenses from one year to the next, fiscal year 21, the city also assumed responsibility of the gallery that's included in this, and there's an additional $61,000 from those operations. So in the future, you're going to see more expenses because, and hopefully maybe more income, but just let you know that that's a change from the prior year.
And do it just very quickly. The gallery is the former Grand Pavilion Conference Center space that's under the Embassy Suites Hotel. In January, the city assumed management of that space.
And as of this month, we'll start to record revenues separately in both Benton North and Benton South. So it'll be easy for us to talk when we give our monthly reviews of this, of how the revenues are and where they are and the expenses are.
All right. Thank you. The next statement, please. If you hit the down arrow, oh, you're already on September. Okay. All right. The Carolina Classic Fair for the quarter. I always always say before we get to going over these statements that there are cycles in public facilities. And for you that's been on the commission a long time, you recognize that. The Carolina Classic Fair is going to impact the first two quarters, depending on how many days of the fair occurs in the first quarter as opposed to the second quarter. But every one of these facilities has different operations going on, and it impacts the specific quarter. So I just want you to understand that. One day of the fair makes a huge difference in what you see here. Total operating revenues from 21 increased 194,000 to 280,000, and that's a $228,000 increase. Going back to the bottom line, as I was requested to start from, you can see that the loss increased 264,000 from the previous year, $95,000 loss to $360,000 loss.
Can I ask a question? This is Bill Oakes.
Sure.
Is that consistent with what it would have been in 19 to provide some comparison? Because I know 20 really is difficult to look at.
I don't know if somebody from the fair would like to speak to that. I do not have those numbers in front of me.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Bill. We looked at that comparatively separate, because like you said, it's hard to compare 2020, September 30, 2020, when we're completely shut down, not just fair related, fairgrounds, and even some of Bowman Gray. It's hard to compare. So I did go back, at least on my own, and we talked a little bit about it internally last week. 2019 is actually very similar. And as Dewey said, there's kind of cycles. And if the fair starts September 29th instead of October 1st, obviously that's very impactful. So one thing, if you were to look at 2019, it's very similar, other than the contractual services line is a lot higher in 2021. And a lot of that is because we already had the checks, everything printed up for this year's fair before October 1st. So that hit before revenue. So it would look a little different, but that's really the main difference. So everything before September 30th fair-wise is pretty cyclical. And then you'll see real impact numbers next quarter when you actually see real revenues. So a lot of the expenses leading up to are going to be the same. The revenues are really the big difference in general.
It would seem to me, and I know I'm new to the commission, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on here. It just would seem that a comparison to at the end of next quarter, providing a comparison to 19 would be a much more apples to apples comparison for us to look at. Maybe that I'm overstepping. I don't know. I'm new, and I feel like I can kind of say whatever I want, and then I can learn. So I apologize if that's not reasonable or feasible, but just I think comparing to 20 is just kind of not really relevant.
Bill, I will just say, I appreciate your suggestion, and obviously I will do what has I'm directed, but I will tell you that rain also impacts the fair. So I cannot remember how much rain there was in 2019, but that's also something else that impacts these fairs also.
Well, I'm looking more of just of all these financial statements, not just the fair, but I think all of these are going to be impacted so dramatically from 2020 as compared to 20, and that most of them are probably going to be much more applicable to 2019 than they are in this fiscal year. So that was just my suggestion. It wasn't really directed just at the fair.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. If you'll, the current Winston-Salem Fairgrounds for the first quarter, again, you can see this is crazy, different. There was a loss of $459,000 in fiscal year 30. Fiscal year 21, we currently have a profit of $131,000. And if you want to scoot up to the top of the non-operating revenues, you can see what caused this there at your cursor. We have intergovernmental revenue of $606,000. That's a one-time thing. There was a grant, and I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that.
Dewey, I'll jump in real quick. So yeah, what Dewey's referencing is the SVOG grant, which I think we talked about in the last month's meeting, where we had applied with the Small Business Association for a shuttered venue operators grant. And this is non-fair related. So all the non-fair events, we submitted our losses and we were awarded $606,121. And then we also talked about how we applied for a supplemental award based upon further losses into the time period. I did get confirmation back last week that we did not, we're not awarded anything for the supplemental award, mainly due to they looked at just first quarter calendar year, and how that rolled in with us is we still had ice skating during the pandemic. Even though we didn't have events, we still had ice skating at both periods of that first quarter in 2019 and 2021 or 2020. So our impact wasn't as substantial as if they would have taken the summer where we were just completely shut down with no events and no ice skating because we're not open then. So just a point of reference.
Are there any other questions on this statement? All right. For Bowman Gray, there were not any events in fiscal year 20. So it was ancillary revenues that was provided there. In fiscal year 21, there were 5 races in this quarter. And the bottom line, you can see that it was a loss of $49,000 in fiscal year 20 and $155,000 for fiscal year 21. Are there any questions? Or Grant, are you gonna?
Sure. So the first quarter, if you remember, for those who were here when we wrote the budget, remember we were going to ramp up in July through September, starting to ramp things back up with the budget. The good news is that we came in at $369,000, which is $89,000 more than our budget for the first quarter, and $64,000 more than we did all of last year. So that's a good trend for us there. We still are seeing cancellations. In September, we had over $100,000 worth of cancellations due to the Delta variant, and we will still see those through the fall. In October and November, we had groups move into 2022 and 2023. So, but if you look at the numbers all the way down, all the way to the bottom, we were expected to lose $403,000 on the budget. We lost $238,000, which is a savings of $164,000 in the first quarter. So we're very pleased with the first quarter and how it's going. Bill, to your point, if you look at the convention center in 2019, we're still way off the base from what we would have done for 19. Looking at that year, we were close to hitting $5 million in revenue for the year. You know, so it's going to be harder for us, but I think it's going to take some time for the convention center to build back, just because people are scared. You know, right now we have 900 people having lunch downstairs. It's the largest event we've done since March of 2020. You know, so it's some groups are willing and some groups still are really not willing to do that. But first quarter, I think is a win for us, especially being up $89,000 in revenue versus the budget. I'll be glad to answer any questions on the first quarter. Dewey, back to you.
All right. Back to that same statement.
Can you hear me? Yeah, hey, yeah,
Yes.
sorry. Just a quick comment regarding what Bill had mentioned. As these come back in at the next time that we look at these financials, having the column added in showing the 2019 will give us sort of a relevant column to reference back to, and we can sort of skip the 2020. So I think that would be helpful for the board as well, especially if it's the first time that you'd seen those. But even for those who've been on the committee, that at least gives us a relevant comparison. So I would ask that if that's possible to include September 30th of 2019, or well, 12/31/2019, when we're looking at the next, add that column for a reference point. But on the convention center, we are hearing some things from other markets that I'm involved in, where they are getting more activity in the convention, but it's still a big challenge. And I was just going to ask Grant about the cancellations that were noted. These folks just saying, hey, this is just delayed for a few months, or most of them just saying, hey, we'll see you next year?
Well, you know, the ones that canceled, the one that canceled in September, I would say that probably 70% of their attendees are 60 and above. So I think they were really nervous about coming out. And that was right when the Delta variant first started. We had some education groups. You know, it's just really tough on education to meet right now, you know, and with the sub issues with employees and things like that. There were several groups that actually, there was a couple groups that wrote letters to the city council asking for us to allow them to cancel and to move on. So you know, we're still booking, and I mean, it's great news that we're starting to see we're even seeing new business. And the good thing is that we have a base with a lot of these groups that they still want to come here. They just couldn't come here this year.
Thanks.
Any other questions to Grant? Basically, it's very easy to see on the city side the bottom line for the convention center, because basically the general fund support is the amount that's used to bring the bottom line to zero. And so you can see that in fiscal year 20, it was 300,000, and that dropped to 205,000 in fiscal year 21, which was $94,000 less that the general fund had to kick in to bring it to zero. And if there are no other questions, that's the end of my report.
Thank you for that, Dewey. We will move on to our recap of the Carolina Classic Fair.
Thank you, Haley. First off, I guess the memo, you want to put that up, Rachel?
Yeah,
we actually, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said just give a minute. I didn't have it ready. I didn't know you were presenting it.
want to do the comparison also. There we go. I actually presented this at the last commission meeting, so I'm just going to kind of go over some of the high points and acknowledge there is correction on the one that I presented the last time. This year, we ended with a 37.72% decrease in attendance compared to the 2019 fair. Our total attendance was 182,048, which was about 34% below our 5-year average. The fair generated $863,818,000 in unaudited gate and advanced sale admissions. This is the correction portion from the last one that was presented, which would be reduced by 7% or approximately 56,000 due to the sales tax mandate from the General Assembly. Overall, Straits paid the fair $777,422 this year, which is a 24% decrease in carnival revenue compared to the 2019 fair. We also offered some new options this year, the $25 weekday wristband and the $40 weekend. This helped, even with the decrease in sales, this helped distribute our sales traffic to our less crowded days. And our fair sponsorship had, we brought in $80,650 in sponsorship revenue this year. If you want to pull up the fair comparison, this is a little bit more of a breakdown. This is a 10-year comparison of the fair. As you can see, 2020 is blank. The total attendance versus paid attendance, you can see the large difference from the decrease in crowds, which with weather and restrictions, I think we did fairly well considering what all challenges we did have this year compared to 2019. It also gives you a gate admission revenue breakdown, the carnival revenue, space rental fees. There's a big difference there with community food booths. We didn't have as many of those participate as in 2019. And then our competitive entries, those were also down in our advanced sale locations. I've also included in with your packet, you don't have to present this, there is a breakdown of the Winston-Salem Police Department summary. No issues this year. There was like 28 incident reports, about 24 kids that were lost. They were all reunited with their parents. The PD used drones this year, which helped monitor the crowds and traffic. And they also had their mobile command vehicle also in play this year. And our metal detectors were also used successfully. There is also a breakdown of the sponsorship that kind of breaks down all of our sponsorship revenue. And there's 2 attachments, the fair advertising summary, which lists out print, ad, radios, how we spend the total advertising budget that we have for the fair. If anyone, once they look through that, has any problems, just give me a call. And then there's also an attachment for the publicity report presented by Feisty, our PR person. That kind of gives you a breakdown of impressions, how many people seen the ads, those type of things. I know we're kind of running short on time, so if anyone has any questions on any of that material, please let me know. Does anyone have any questions on what I've kind of recapped really quickly? Okay. So what's next?
Thank you, Cheryl. We are going to go to our staff updates. if we have any further staff updates from Bowman Gray, Winston-Salem State football season, Fairgrounds Operations, Thunderbirds, or the Benton.
So very, very quickly, Haley, as far as the update on the Bowman Gray Stadium Improvements Project, the new restrooms and new concession stands have been completed. They went online. All of them were online during the Winston-Salem State football season. The improvements, they're on the second floor in the field house with the new flooring in both the Richardson room and in the hallway outside the athletic administration offices is complete. Some new HVAC equipment has been installed both in the field house and in the press box. So the last phase remaining is resurfacing the racetrack. And that work has already begun. I think that they're actually in the process of milling the inside of the track to start installing the new concrete apron there between the track and the football field. So keep our fingers crossed that we'll have good weather all through the winter time, and the hope is that that'll be done by the 1st of April.
Thank you, Van. Anything on Fairgrounds Operations?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Fairgrounds Operations are running fairly back to normal. We've hosted quite a few big events the last month, including a Wake Forest homecoming tailgate, Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools student showcase, and then we had a monster truck show this past weekend. Our ice skating situation is going very well, so we're still requiring masks indoors. We still require masks to be worn on the ice. But we are seeing actually a very good increase in numbers with ice skating right now. And I think that's pretty much it. Just to piggyback what Ben mentioned, for Bowman Gray, they also have just completed or will complete fiber all throughout the stadium, which will run all the way to the field house and press box for future connectivity and current connectivity with ticketing and other things like that. As far as Thunderbirds go, they have played, I think, 4 home games to date. Their 5th one will be this weekend, November 20th. As always, if y'all would like to request tickets, shoot me or Ben an email or a phone call, and we do have tickets set aside for the city, for city officials. And that's been going well. They've averaged about 1,700 per game through those first 4 games. And just compared to 2019, which was about 1,900. So right in line. We still get phone calls about folks concerned not wearing masks, that's always a conversation. It's still going. So other than that, I think that's all I got.
Thank you, Robert. Anything else, Grant, for the Benton?
Just excited for people to come see it. You know, the art's up. We still are about 90% away from finishing there. We still are working on the tunnel, which is a work in progress. So it's I think you're all going to be excited when you see Benton South. We are, you know, the old space. We are referring to that as Benton South. The old the main building here is Benton North. So it's exciting to see people back in the building, and can't wait for all the commission members to come take a tour of the new space.
Excellent. We're definitely looking forward to seeing that space. Commissioners, are there any other questions for city staff at this time? I don't see anyone with any questions. Just a quick reminder that our next meeting is going to be December 20th, so be on the lookout for your information from Rachel. And if there are no further questions, we are adjourned today. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.